Hello everyone from Canada. This is Un from the UK. We're going to showcase you a kind of like a hyperlayer look. What we're going to do is we're going to show you some reference of the haircut because I think that's important to have a final look before you start to create a haircut. So what you can see, like I pre-sections the haircut. So I kind of like take some of the excess length off first. And what we're going to do, I'm going to start with the layers. I'll come back to do the length after. And what we're going to do, we're going to keep most of the length. Maybe we're just going to come back and do a little bit of refine through the fingers. So imagine you're in the salon right now and you're doing this to layer the haircut and start with a kind of like your sectioning. It's important that you kind of like look into the area where you're going to section it. It's about the thickness and about the ratio as well. So most of the time that we kind of like to separate the hair behind the ear. Do is like I'm going to fill the hair and separate the hair in the middle. And so I have even amount of distribution of weight in the front and also the back. So in this case, what I do is I separate the hair just across behind the ear. It's not quite to the top of the ear yet, and just behind it. So I'm going to wet it down, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. How high you're going to go through the layers, and especially like I know how to cut the layers, but I don't know where to stop. The higher you go with the layer, the more weight you're going to be taking, and also the shorter it will be. So for example, what I'm going to do today is my section's going to cut into a vertical sections, starting from the middle. And what I'm going to show you is once I've done with my sections, I'm going to turn the head around for you guys. I think with your section, I like to do with my sections a slightly thicker for the first one, just because you have a much more of a cleaner guideline to go through with your haircut. And a vertical sections, I'm going to use the guideline from the base. So bring everything out from the base, from the guideline. So keeping the length. So I'm judging how much length that I'm going to drop off. Okay, so I like to keep some of the length. So I'm going to use the length from here as my guideline. And I'm going to start elevating each time. Higher and higher. So the cutting angle is slightly rounded as we speak. It will say a bit more convex. So I get my layers through there and I comb the hair down. I'm just going to check the haircuts. And the next sections, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a parallel sections, working with the same directions, combing the hair straight out to begin with. And remember, bring it back to the same guideline and angle as you go. And you slightly over direct the hair back to the previous to retain a little bit more length onto the corner.
Hi, Un, there's a question.
Yep.
So the question is, why are you cutting the layer first before you cut the perimeter?
Okay. If I have a long hair and I have to cut it to a shoulder length, so probably what I would do is I'm going to cut the length first so I could see where my guideline is, and then I layer it, right? So now I'm doing the reverse, because the length that I've got now is probably the length that I'm going to be finish off. I might not cut that much. I might cut a tiny little bit later just to refine it. So for doing the length, so I have to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I do my layers, 5, 6, 7. That's going to be taking a long time, and it's not what I want to do, because sometimes if I'm in the salon, or maybe you know, like my client's running late, so that's going to take too much of the steps. So what I'll be doing sometimes, if I know this is going to be my length, so you're pretty much, you know where the guideline will be. Even so, if you know the basic rules of how to layer hair, you could even layer from this long hair to that, and then bring your outline through. And also there's another thing about like going to cut the outline first. If you cut the outline first and then you layered it, you'll get to retain a stronger external shape, which means the outline will be a lot more stronger. So when you cut it to a shoulder length, you will see more of a long, kind of like a long bobbish kind of shape. But if you start with the layer to begin with, you get a much more of a kind of a softer looking, and the outline will be a lot more kind of serrated as well when you finish. And that's why I choose to cut the layer first, so the outline would be a lot more softer, plus the length is almost there. I hope that answers your questions. Okay, so we continue to cut to behind the ear, and what I can see that's my guideline now. As I'm over directing, I'm getting longer to the corner. And why I'm doing that, because we all know that the hairlines go a little bit more kind of higher through the front and going lower through behind the ear. So by over directing behind the ear, it helps me to retain the length. This is going to be the length that can be traveled through the back, and then you can travel to the front. So if I retain the length from here, then I'll be able to see the length in the front and also the back. So once I've done this side, and what I'm going to do is I'm not going to cross check just yet, because like I haven't done the other side. So there's no point of checking it if you only have done just one side, because you might do it perfectly and then you mess it up the other side. So you're wasting too many steps when you cut hair sometimes. So I'm going to do the same sectioning and working vertically, and what I'm changing is I'm only changing the way that how I comb the hair. So this side I'm pulling it back to myself, and when I'm doing the other side I'm pushing it. So the pushing and combing to myself, it kind of give you the directional. So I don't like to change my body position too many times, because I think when you cut hair we need consistency, which means that the less that you change the way that how you cut hair, the more precise you're going to be. And so as you know that if you kind of like combing it and change it and cut it to this side, your hand position is changing, the way that how the scissors going is changing as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stay in one point, and what I'm going to do is I'm just changing the way that I comb the hair, but my fingers and my elevations is going to be the same, and my cutting angle is going to be the same as well. So that's what we call consistent. That helps you to develop your shape a lot more quicker and more precise as well. Okay, so the next sections keep parallel to the first one, and you need to kind of like understand that what you can do is to comb the hair very neat from the root, and if you don't see your guideline, don't cut it, go back to it. And I would say like the bigger the outline, the bigger the guideline, the better, because like you thinking I'm going to take small sections when I cut hair, it's going to help me to develop more cleanliness, more precision into it. Not really. I think more importantly is like how you're gonna over direct the hair to get the shape, and also how clean you can see your sections. So the finer the hair, the bigger the section. The thicker the hair, the smaller the sections. So there's no guideline, but the guideline is sensitivity. Okay, so I'm going to go through the last sections through the back now, and what I'm going to do later on, I'm going to go into cross-check it. Okay, any questions so far?
So, if for what you're currently working at the back,
Yep.
for the students' references,
Yep.
is this considered a triangular shape, triangular
Yes.
layer?
It is. Yes, this is a triangular shape. So every shape you start from the back, working to the front, and the weight is dropping to the front like this way. If you see the layer is going to be slightly longer to the corner and then dropping a little bit longer to the front. That's what we call the triangular shape. So the round shape is going slightly heavier to the back, and the triangular shape goes heavier to the front. And then what we're going to call this, we call it square. So a square shape is a balance shape. A square shape doesn't mean that you're going to put a box over the head. It's about the weight distributions. So when we say the triangular, it doesn't mean that you're going to see a triangular on the head. It's about, for me, it's about the weight distribution. So yes, whoever asked me the questions, you were right. This is the triangular layers. But we're going to do a combination. The combination between the triangular and the round shape as well. Okay, so I'm going to go to cross-check now. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to move the head slightly to you over this side. So when I cross-check, I'm going to split, most people would split the hair into half. But what I'm going to do is, I like to split a little bit more across to the other side. It's almost 70% on this side, 30% on that side. So when I do this, I'm going to go horizontally, right? So I'm taking much bigger sections on this area when I cross-check, because I'm trying to cross-check more across this surface. Because I think like most of the time when you split the hair into the middle and you do 50 and 50, and sometimes you recut it, and when you come back to your technique later, you will see a little of a steps in between it, and that happens very often. Now you should remember, we should only cross check, not cross cutting, because this is not right when you cut a lot off when you go into cross check. So you put your comb parallel to the section, so you go in, right in. What you're trying to do is that you're trying to elevate the hair back to the same elevation that you cut it, not higher or lower, right? So most people, I'll show you in a minute. Most people do this. When they cut the hair, they layered it, and then they do this. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. They're dropping it and then they check the length through here. But hold on a minute. When did you do that? When did you cut your hair? When you laid it? When did you lay it here? We will lay it up. So imagine when you laid it up. So when you checked it, you should bring it back to the original elevation, the level of your elevation. And you might go a little bit higher to kind of remove the corner through the top, but you shouldn't be going lower. Okay, so I'll check my first sections, and I'm going to go through the next one. I'm going to go slightly lower now. So you start from here and going higher through your layers. So it's shorter there, longer here. So it makes sense for me, you cut the hair shorter here. So you should be cross-checking the short hair first and then gradually check the longer hair after, right? So if you do it this way, then it will getting longer through the bottom. So I might repeat myself too much. I hope you don't mind, because this is my first time doing a live broadcasting. Because normally what I do on the live cutting class, I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to interact with the student, so I get a little bit of feedback and seeing if they're gonna know what I'm talking about. So when I finish this side now, I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna cross-checking it on the other half. Same amount of hair that I'm taking, 70% now, and leave out 30%. You don't split in the middle, you split across it a little bit more. And then you start again. So using the larger teeth of the comb to section. And when you need to kind of create the tension from the root. Now I mean that don't pull the hair, just comb the hair through, very, very gentle, and comb it through the root and use the comb to give you the angle and the guideline. You might dust off a little bit of the length, but not a lot. And then you dropped it, and your body positions is very important as well. I think like you need to stand straight in front of your sections. If you kind of like stepped aside, then you round it off when you cross check. Okay, so any questions so far about the cross checking? No?
There was a comment saying that the subsection is crisp.
Thank
Very
you.
clean subsection.
Thank you. Thank you. It all comes to practice, guys. Why I say the hyper layers, because it kind of like relate to the 70s ideas. And you can see a lot of hipsters now on the streets, or maybe on the Instagrams or Pinterest. People pretty much like kind of embracing those 70s Californian look, and almost like a little bit more kind of come back to the European mullet kind of thing. What I'm going to do through the front is I like to open up the face. What I'm going to do with opening up the face, I need something to try to draw the weight back. So I need to be shorter around the face and gradually become longer to the back area. I have got my length and I've got the weight behind the ear now, because I'm going from shorter in the middle and gradually become longer to the corner through the back. What I need now is I'll need to open up the face a little bit more and drop the length through behind the ear and put a fringe through after. So I'm going to wet the hair down first. And we were talking about shape. The shape is triangular. I like to have a combinations of shape. So you don't have to do a triangular all the way. Making the haircuts and putting things together is about how to, be flexible with the technique. So once you know the shape, once you know the technique, you put them into different places, and then you think about how you're going to connect them, or maybe disconnect them. Okay, so disconnection is not something new or something crazy. Disconnection is helping you to get or to retain the length and the weight that you need. Bring the hair right up and comb the hair neat from the root, and think about the length, the choice of length that you need. And you start to cut it from shorter to longer. So now through this side, the profile, you can tell this is the angle. Now I'm not pulling it to the front and I'm doing this, I'm not doing that. The reason for that is if you're trying to pull the hair to the front and you cut it, it's often that your hand's going to move around the face and you will create a hole around the receding area. By elevating the hair inside the hairline, it helps you to retain more weight, okay? And also, you're not using all directions to cut hair. You're using a cutting angle to cut hair. Now, the first section is done. The next section is what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the front as a pivot point. I'm not pivot from the top. So most people would pivot from the top and going around and going around and going around. Most people would do this from the top going this way and cutting a pizza over there. I'm doing the opposite. I'm starting to pivot from here to go doing this. Now we know that if you cut from short there or maybe longer here, this is the pivot point. So what you're going to do is like, if you retain the length and you pivot from here, you're going this way. You see? You're getting longer to the corner. By doing here, from there, and you pivot from the top, you're doing this. So you're going shorter. Can you see what I mean? Right. So that's a different, like I'll do again. So pivot from the front, this is the angle. Pivot from the front. Longer to the corner. Okay, pivot from the top. You see, you're going shorter, right? So that's why I'm choosing a different pivot point when I do this haircut, so I can retain more length through the corner. So what I'm going to do is like, so this is the middle, so every time I'm going back into the middle, I'm taking almost like a triangular sections. And when I showed you to the profile, I'm going to comb the hair back up. I'm not all directing to the front. I'm standing in front of it. You see that I'm not cutting much through the front. I'm only taking the length from the corner and the back because you're pivoting from the front. You shouldn't be cutting anything from there. So keep damping the hair, going into the front, pivoting the sections. Keep going. So remember, you cut the back already, so do not cut the back again. Well, mind you though, it's not going to be reaching the back anyway. You might have a little corner later, but you won't have much. So keep going, and you're bringing all the sections back to the previous. You're bringing it to the previous. So your hand is slightly moving from here, and you turn around it. And then you do the last sections. So what I'll do is I've showed you, okay, I'll come back to slightly more to the profile now. I'm going to bring the hair up. And you go up. Okay, so you can start to see the effect from the front on this side. So you would have like shorter to longer length that goes down. So don't pivot from the top, pivot from the front. So you're going to take your section from there into the point in the front and you push it. It's much easier for yourself to cut from short to long, you see. Short to long.
There's a question about if the subsection,
yeah,
it's being over directed in a traveling guideline or if it's a stationary guideline.
It's a traveling guideline. What do you think, Sherman? What do you understand about the traveling guideline? Maybe you should kind of
Well, in the Aveda haircutting terminology, traveling guideline, it's when, in a simplified term, it's like when if you have 5 subsection, it's you made the guideline as number 1, and then it's like 2 going into 1 as a reference, and then 3 going into 2, 4 going into 3, 5 going into 4. For them, stationary guideline means that if 2, 3, 4, 5, all the subsequent subsections are all going into number 1. So that's how they would understand in our terminology.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's the same, but maybe we just call it differently. We say like going back to the previous, or 3 to 2, 2 to 1. I mean, like the idea is like if you overdirect, you're gonna get longer and you're gonna retain the length and the weight. That's basically what it is. And if you don't travel, if you just like go straight out from the head, you're gonna stay the same length all over, and the shape as well gonna be the same. I'm gonna cut a little bit off the length, not much, probably just like give it a little bit more of a kind of a cleaner outline on the finish.
Here's a question, Un.
Yep.
It's about the front and back. Is it a disconnected shape and from the front to back, or is it connected internally?
It kind of visually is connected, but technically it has got a little corner in there. I'm going to blow dry it later, and I'm going to show you where the corner is. And you're going to join the corner if you wanted to. I'm taking quite a large sections. Now, I'm running out of hair, you see, like because I have layered the hair already. So now, after 2 more sections, I'll be running out of hair, and the outline will be done. And then I'll move on to blow drying the hair after. So this, they kind of like, you have to be careful when you cut the line. And I think what you have to be careful is that most of the time that the way that how we directed the hair from behind the ear, we're kind of trying to do this. We're trying to lean forward and trying to bring the hair to there. But I would say that you need to work parallel to your sections. If your comb parallel to the sections, you see the way that how the comb will go straight down, that will be the length, and that will be the angle you need. Shouldn't be there, because the head is slightly forward now. The way that we're trying to make the head slightly forward is trying to compensate for the roundness through here, right? So what I have to do is I don't comb the hair in and out when I do the line, because from doing that the hair will travel a lot more, and when it's dry it's kind of get longer in the middle. So what you need to do is like you need to comb the hair straight down to the same point, and remember the head is slightly forward. So what you have to do is you're going to work parallel to your sections and bring the length, okay, parallel to the sections, and you cut it. So I'm going to do that now. The quicker you cut the line, the better, because it's like, you know, it's just imagine you trying to draw a line on a piece of paper. If you draw it fast, the line will be more cleaner, sharper. If you're trying to do it slow, or if you're trying to kind of like, I think I need to do it very, very clean, very properly, so I need to go slow. But then you realize that your line is not as clean as you go fast. So do that, and then we're going to go into blow dry. And root lift, not too big. Remember, the way that how you cut hair, it should be the same way how you finish it. So wrap drying the hair, creating a tiny little bit of a root lift, and then we're going to go back to refine the hair after. Right, come back to the haircut now. I think like I need to be quick, otherwise you're gonna get boring. And so you can see like the shapes is over here. I'm gonna open up the face a little bit more with the layers, and I'm gonna put a kind of like an undercut through the fringe area, and I'm gonna point into the top as well. Right, just before I go into point into the top, you can have those kind of like what we call it, almost like the butterfly kind of effect, yeah? So the girls like to have like a center parting and have a little bit of a soft fringe that will kind of help you to draw, you know, the movement back, and it's quite nice. But what we're going to do today is we're going to do a little bit more like what we call a double fringe, and I'm going to separate the hair now from here to there. Positions like where I like to stop the fringe going backward, so that is going to be my sections. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and just below, okay, the roundness of the head, when it doesn't go any further back, I'm going to come down a little bit more, so it would have a longer length that dropped over it, so make it a little bit more precise now. From there, clipped it away. Okay, so I'm just going to do one side so you can see a comparison. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer it straight up. So that's the length, so that will kind of come into just below the eyebrow. So I need to go a little bit shorter. So how do you know that how short you're going to cut it? Now, it's just like when you go into your shower, you turn on the hot water, you don't just straight away jump in, right? So when you cut hair, it's the same. You don't know how much it jumped, it's just like you don't know how hot the water is. So what you can do is like you cut it a little bit first, yeah? You test the water before you go into your shower. So if it's too hot, yeah, you turn it a little bit colder. So what we'll do with hair is the same. Now I'm doing the same on the other side. I'll make sure the sections is nice and clean. And the same thing is I'm gonna bring the fringe right up, okay, and I see my guideline from the other side. I cut it through there. So I've got the layer, soft layer fringe through there. And so now I'm gonna drop the sections. So I'll let the top to sit over it, where you can see the fringe now. And what I need to do is to kind of like working a little bit more choppy into it. So you don't want to make it too clean, but you almost sketch the outline in by pointing into shorter to slightly longer. And drop the hair and look at the fringe, how it looks. When you look at it, it's almost looks like the picture that I showed you earlier on as well. So if you now, Sherman, if you want to show them the pictures again, you can. So keep it quite serrated. Not this one, yep. Keep it quite serrated. The same on this side. Everything that works together. So put the comb through the hair and sketch the shape by using pointing. It's almost trying to give you that sort of razor effect, yeah, but using scissors. And I point into the area that has got more. I just want to show you the corner as well now. So we'll see like the haircuts from the front and the haircuts from the back. Now I have got the corner here. Can you see it? Now in this case, when you finish, okay, you can lift the hair up and just remove the corner, and then drop the sections lower just to remove a little bit more, and then you can point into it. move the hair more as I cut. I don't like to, keep cutting and keep cutting. I think it's important that you try to look at the shape and look at what you do, then and think about what's the next steps. And yeah, and if you need to use any thinning shears or razor to add on a little bit more extra effect onto it, you can as well.
It's so important when you are refining, you actually move the hair after every time you did something to the hair. It's not just for our own sake, right? It's also for the client to be able to see.
And yeah, I hope you like it.